again, welcome everyone. My name is Corey Whalen. Today we are very pleased to produce today's webinar entitled Building Families Through Egg Donation. Our speaker is Richard Grazi, MD of Genesis Fertility, which is located in Brooklyn and Staten Island, and we will be talking about third-party reproduction. Dr. Grazi, I'm going to mute myself now, and we are ready whenever you are. So welcome, and thank you everyone for being here.
My pleasure, and thank you for the invitation to do this. I used to like these web-based seminars a little bit better when I can do them without the video, because even at night I've done them in my PJs, but this will work for me as well. I'm going to present some slides. I mentioned to Corey that in getting them together, it seems to me that it might be a little bit depressing. For the audience, I have taken the tack that it's best to be honest about what's going on in the field of egg donation, how people get to egg donation, and the beautiful thing about those of you who are contemplating using this technique to build your families is that we see patients have unmitigated happiness after this works. Needless to say, for most of them, the door has been closed previously to building a family in any other way, and then a year later they find themselves with a baby. So it does work, and for some it's the only option for building a family, and I'm going to explain to you who we do it on, why we do it, and how we do it. So without further ado, I just want to acknowledge that most women are aware that there is a biological clock that is ticking, and we tend to think of women who need egg donation as those being a little bit older, reproductively speaking, and not old, but older, reproductively speaking. But that's not always true, and if you can take a look at the next slide, you'll see that some women will have need for egg donation early on. They have either ovarian failure as a result of surgery, or they may have some inheritable conditions, as you see down here. So some women go into egg donation even though they're quite young. But if you look at this statistics, these are national statistics on the actual indications for egg donation, you'll see a very low usage or very few indications to do it in these categories, whereas the categories that are mainly responsible for the need for egg donation fall into premature ovarian failure, failed IVF, women who are so-called poor responders, and I'll explain what that is, and those who are perimenopausal. And this can be at any age, certainly in the 30s, even in the early 30s, women can find themselves falling into this group, and that's why it's really not all about age and the biological clock. It's more about what's happening in the ovaries themselves that drives this indication. And the physiologic basis for this has to do with the following graph. If you look at what happens to eggs, to the egg supply in any given woman with the passage of time, you'll note that women are endowed with their entire egg supply at the time that they're born, and every girl is born with approximately 1 million eggs. And an average woman, it takes about 50 years until that egg supply is depleted, and so the average age of menopause, at least in the United States, is approximately 51. But I intentionally did not put age groups over here because the slope of this line, the decline in the eggs, can happen in a much more dramatic way, so that if this were to be 50, this might be a woman who goes through menopause at the age of 40, or in fact you can go through menopause at the age of 30. We certainly have a fair share of women who have had premature ovarian failure in their 20s and have no other choice for building their families than through egg donation. What's important is the ways that we assess the ovarian reserve or ovarian potential in any given woman. And so the importance of that is to note that the time of diminished ovarian reserve, which is when the egg supply is depleted, and we'll talk about the significance of that, actually happens for approximately a decade before the actual menopause. And many women will come into treatment and be in this zone where they have a very low egg supply, and as a result they're having difficulty conceiving. The time-honored test for finding out where any given woman is on this schema of egg depletion has been measuring FSH levels. And the reason for that is that in early reproductive life, when there's lots of eggs and the eggs are all healthy, the pituitary gland, which is the source of follicle-stimulating hormone, does not have to work very hard in order to get the eggs to come up and to ovulate. When there are no more eggs left, the pituitary gland keeps sending out the FSH signal to make the eggs grow, and so the hallmark of menopause is having a high FSH. But the FSH doesn't stay low and then zoom up when the last egg ovulates. What happens is there's a gradual increase in the basal level of FSH as the egg supply is depleted. And so for many years, FSH has been the marker of your so-called ovarian reserve. If the FSH is low, that means that the egg supply is robust. If the FSH level is high, that means that the woman is in this depleted ovarian reserve zone, and that makes things much more difficult. As you'll see, the actual measurement of FSH is somewhat variable, and there are better ways to look at ovarian reserve. I will get to that a little bit later. Now, in any population studied and in any time that it's been studied, we know that fertility potential declines as a function of age. So what you see here is age at the bottom, age at delivery, and a number of women getting pregnant. And you see even back to the 17th century, there was a noted decline in delivery rates as women age, and that's certainly true here in the United States. Even though fertility rates are lower, they still decline as women age. Looking at this another way, in a very classic study by Mencken, who looked at a population of women not using birth control, what he found was that pregnancy would typically occur at about the 50% level in younger women, and then it would go down in different older age groups, and these were the actual ever-delivered patients. And you can see that fertility is declining as a measure of age. And the reason behind that is because that endowment of the follicular supply within the eggs has a steady decline. There are no mechanisms by which a woman can be made to have new eggs, and I'll speak about the consequences of that. The other thing to note is that there is a deflection point. I'm sorry if this slide is not 100% clear. It's been scanned in. But you can see this deflection point that occurs in the average woman at around the age of 37, where the depletion in the egg supply is a little bit more rapid all the way as you get to the menopause, which, by the way, even in the menopause, there will be some eggs left in the ovary. The quality is another issue. And that's why several years ago, the Society for Reproductive Medicine